Well, let's stay with a blues formula, even if it's not quite strictly a 12-bar blues. And let's get into what they used to call the people's key of C, and do a tune that, this is an interesting tune. It's got a big and varied history to it. I know it as a tune called the Jackson Stomp, from an old-timey string band recording by some people that called themselves the Mississippi Mud Steppers. I think they were actually some very sort of philosophically inclined people with a name like that. It's a tune that was popular though with piano players. Big Maceo had a version of this, and there were some other people, I don't remember exactly who, whether it was Speckled Red or who, but there were some other versions at one point called Atlantic Blues, I think. In any case, I learned it as Jackson Stomp, and that's what I'm going to teach it to you as, and you'll see it's got a real roll to it. It's got a real drive, a sort of different kind of feeling than the usual rhythm you get in this thing. So let me play you my version of the Jackson Stomp. The Jackson Stomp, as performed by the Mississippi Mud Steppers, or at least a version derived therefrom. And this is, as I said, in the people's key of C. It's got some things worth sort of taking a look at, though, before we get to the split screen part. The first thing to notice is a right-hand technique that's not too hard. After the first notes, we're going to be doing an alternating thing with our thumb and index finger of the right hand on the second string. That's how I do that. And if you get that practicing, that's a good way to play single note runs. I know Gary Davis used that about exclusively, I think, for his things. Sort of little thing you could work on like that. And I've known very good players like Dan Sadowski and people like that that did that. They played all their single note stuff that way. Okay, now let's look at the left hand. I'll come back to a more difficult right hand thing later. That stuff is pretty straightforward. I don't think those runs will cause you any problem. When you look at what happens when we go to the F chord, This is played this way many, many times in the tune. It doesn't have as much variation for the parts on the F, for some reason, as it does on the others. So that's just holding that much of an F chord. You don't have to have your index finger down, just holding down the second string. And you get to do this, which if you've never done it, don't be surprised if it hurts a little bit. That stretch there and then pulling down for the slide. But fairly straightforward. Then when we go back to C, it actually leaves the standard format. You would expect a couple more bars of C, but instead it just does this much. Which I guess is 2 bars. You would think there would be 4 there. And that's all pretty straightforward. Now, with the G, I actually don't even have a sort of set way that I do it myself. I'm just going to have to kind of write out different things. I always use this thing, or pretty much always use this thing. When you put your thumb down on the 3rd fret of the bass string, then there's just an infinite number of possibilities of things you can find there. That's one that I like. And then it goes back to C. Now that's worth looking at. In the first place, what I do a lot on a tune like this when I've got an alternating bass going on is instead of just going 5th string, 4th string, 6th string, 4th string like that, I'll add that extra bass note in. So in other words, I'm moving this finger back and forth just the same way, but I'm hitting the open low string here. Okay. Now the rest to look at, there's that little finger there. This is something you just have to do, and it's not easy. Get it down to the 4th fret of the 2nd string. Now, at the end, this is actually more important than any of this other stuff. I used to go crazy trying to find ways to hit that A note. If you're playing in G or you're playing in C, a lot of people will move this finger over. Oh, likewise from a G chord, doing this sort of thing. It's a whole lot easier. This is, I think, probably the smartest thing I ever figured out on guitar, though I'm sure I'm not the only one to do it, is that it's a lot easier when you're playing that A note to come over with your index finger. It's a funny thing, but the index finger on your left hand and your right hand, the index finger thinks he's smarter than all the other fingers. So you may as well give him more work. Think of it that way. So there's that phrase. Little finger, and then the index goes over. Come into the next variation, and you can see that a lot of the variations that I've worked out just have to do with the C part, the first beginning part of this. Now, this is tricky. It's very hard to get the timing of this between the 2 hands when I do it any slower. What happens on this hand is here. Bop, bop, bop. Those are the notes we're going to get. But we do it so quickly, is let's look at the right hand again, that what we need to do is play the bass string with our thumb, then the 5th string with our index finger, and then with our middle finger, the 5th string. And then your thumb comes over at the same time that your left hand plays that C note. If you can see what the right hand is doing now, pay careful attention to that. When we get to the split screen, you'll be able to see both hands together. It gets up to speed, it's fast. Okay. From there, if we keep looking at the right hand, we have a thing where we're sort of pretending we have a flat pick in our right hand, and we're going like this. So that's going down, up, just in an alternation like that. We go back to our F. Now on the F, it's still the same thing. And likewise with the C and G parts, the G part is just going to depend on what I feel like, and I think what I'll do is I'll just play things that are sort of typical for me on the split screen, and then I'll tab those out. But there's no way to sort of warn you for them other than tell you they're just about sure to be off of this position. All right, the next variation. Yeah, this is what I think of sort of as the melody proper to this. So we go with the C7th, and look how the index finger jumps over again to the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. Now, okay, what's happening here? That's the 1st fret, and then so an E flat and an E on the 4th string, 1st and 2nd. But with our right hand, we keep our bass going so that that one note, the 1st note is played with your index finger, your right hand there. The E is played with your thumb. Index, thumb of the right hand. And you can see all the work that your index finger is doing there. And back to our F. Okay, and I think that there's, there's also the other way to do that. Which is actually even easier than the other one. And of course you can improvise on it all you want. I'll try to do some of that in the split screen, and also, as I said, do some of the stuff that I'll be doing out of the G position, where it can get pretty wild. And I'll try to go slow enough so that you can follow everything. And I think now it's time to go ahead and move to the split screen, and let's get Jackson's Stomp under our fingers. Same phrase. Our bar C now, and G, and C, index. Watch the right hand, watch the right. Once more. Flat pick, and back to F. Bar C now, G, C, okay. C, and G. Same phrase. Try to improvise. C.